Welcome to Locked in Leftist, episode 15. I'm your host, Bubble, and I'm joined always by my co host, El Diablo.
Hey everyone, it's El Diablo.
So, today we have, unfortunately, the topic of abortion defense. I think it kind of caught us all by surprise when the draft Supreme Court decision was leaked um, earlier this week and or last week. Um, so there's been a rush of activity with groups around here, groups I'm in, kind of preparing for that, as well as protesting and agitating to try to make them change their mind because it is not fully finalized yet. Um, what were your thoughts when you had that bomb drop?
So initially, I think like the first thought you're for me, I was like, what the hell? That's anger, and I'm like, that's ridiculous. And then the more I thought about it, I'm like, what if this is just planned, was planned for voting stuff, because people are across the board are tired of voting. They know that it's not doing anything. Um, yeah, that's what I started to think, and I was like, maybe it's a ploy to get more people out for the midterms, to vote for either side, whatever, because the right is gonna totally want that, if they believe that. Not all of them, but and then the Democrats are probably gonna, run on this and say, oh, we'll protect your reproductive rights, but they haven't done that in the past. So that was my afterthought. But regardless of my afterthought, I still think, it's awful. You need to protect reproductive rights for everyone, not just, for women or people who have uteruses, but for anyone. Um, like, I don't think, some of the conversations going around talking about, I know that some people use it to kind of make it show how ridiculous it sounds with like men or people who have male reproductive parts. Um, they're saying certain things to make it look like how ridiculous it is to try to control people's bodies. But I do think we should be working to fight for bodily autonomy across the board for everyone with their different needs, for that. So yeah, that was my first reaction, was shock and anger, fear, for sure.
Yeah, we had a emergency protest the day of, and yeah, I mean, the people who had been working in this space have been warning about the end of Roe versus Wade for a long time, but it was very shocking. And, I think the aftermath is still very much setting in. Um, there's a few things that I think are important to cover. One of which is all the doors that this opens, as far as um, repealing Roe versus Wade opens up the door to repealing everything. Um, Meaning the Supreme Court is expected actually to, soon after Roe versus Wade, by 2024, I've read, um, repeal federal protection for access to birth control, repeal federal protection for gay marriage, repeal federal protection for uh, homosexuality. So a lot of these things come from Texas. Roe versus Wade comes from Texas. Also, Lawrence versus Texas, um, which struck down laws criminalizing homosexuality. And that's expected to be repealed now. And they've even talked about um, repealing protection for interracial relationships. So there's a whole wave of oppression that is going to come from the decision to repeal Roe versus Wade. Um, and at the same time, this is not at all mollified the right. So I follow some right wing Twitter users, and you would think they would be celebrating getting what they want or whatever. But what I've seen in the past few days is an acceleration of calls for violence. Um, they, are not at all satisfied. Um, there's still all this talk of, um, changing the country to put it back to the way it used to be. Um, talk of, doing things to the words that they've been using for LGBT people. Um, yeah, so uh, dark times ahead. Um, but we're here to talk about defense and how we can protect ourselves from those things. Um, the groups I'm in have been gathering resources and making plans. Um, what have you all been doing up there?
So up here we had I think it was in San Jose, there was a protest. And then in LA there was a bigger one where there was lots of footage online for it. And actually I wanted to talk about that specific for a moment because there was a video on Twitter. I don't live in LA, I live in the Bay Area, but there was, I believe, a group of people and an officer, an LAPD officer, and there was, I think, one person getting attacked by this officer, and people started surrounding them, and there was ended up being two, and they ended up saving the guy from arrest, and the two LAPD officers fled, and I just think that's like so important that there are more of us than that, like them in general, the ruling class, the people who do their bidding. Um, and we are, I feel like, able to protect these sort of things that I think are like just, inalienable human rights. And Over here, we've just been having organizations. People in California are not, I don't want to say organizers, but people who are like more comfortable, they're not taking it that seriously because they know that, or they think that it'll be protected because it's California and, states' rights. And that's what people keep saying. Um, and I wanted to echo what you said about people, LGBT people being unsafe, the community being unsafe, interracial marriage being, unsafe too. I'm not sure how to word that. Sorry, but that one, not just that one, but all of these um, people or minorities are going to be really worried and in trouble. And who's to say, like, if they start saying states' rights for everything, they might be able to overturn, your what's in the Bill of Rights, which is like it's a slippery slope, like you're saying, because I'm already here in California and we don't have much access to firearms, your Second Amendment right. Um, so it leaves a lot open to interpretation, and that's why we wanted to talk about it and to kind of, yeah, again, show people how to protect each other um, in these dark times, but also to show why we shouldn't be complacent because this has happened before. It's not just, this has happened in so many different parts of the world where things have slowly broken down and people did fight or they didn't. And things always ended up worse. People were very restricted, people were dying, and we want to avoid that as much as possible. And just because it's America doesn't mean it's not going to happen here. We've seen that it's definitely regressing. Um, as far as organizing, I know that there will be more protests with serious organizers. Again, a lot of people are taking it seriously, but a lot of people are seeing that it's or think it's cushy and comfortable because we're in California in the Western Hemisphere where a few of the states are more, I would say, abortion friendly. They're definitely more okay with it here. But there are people here who also don't like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. And on the one hand, I do think places like California will be safer longer. but they won't be safe forever. You know, Mitch McConnell has already been talking about a nationwide abortion ban. Um, we saw federal law enforcement in Portland, you know, doing wild stuff in 2020. And even actually this past week in Los Angeles, there were Department of Homeland Security cops, I think, who were doing most of the brutalizing of protesters.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, so this is,
That's who it was. Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
yeah, yeah, but I'm glad you brought that up. You know, that de-arrest was very impressive. I think that's one of the things that people should think about. You know, as well as, you know, there's been a lot of um, graffiti on anti-abortion clinics and facilities and billboards around the country. Um, yeah, I saw a very disturbing thread today about the path to legalizing abortion. So, um, you know, Congress can pass a law that legalizes abortion. Um, and, you know, Joe Biden talks about that. However, uh, I I think the Democrats need 6 or 7 more senators, which means that they need to win the next election by 19 points, by 19%, um, which is very extremely unlikely. It's borderline not possible, and it just goes to show how rigged the system is. Because it, you know, it doesn't matter if there are more people voting Democrat or whatever. The system is such that uh, there's almost no path that way. Here, there's been a lot of protests. Um, you know, I expect we'll have a lot more protests. This is kind of ground zero of this fight and a lot of other fights. And, you know, people organizing in other ways. So for here in Texas, you know, abortion is already almost completely illegal. And Texas has trigger laws like many other states. I think it's like 28 states or something like that. 30 states have trigger laws, which will, as soon as Roe versus Wade gets repealed, abortion will immediately become illegal, even a felony in a lot of places. Um, so we're preparing for that. I encourage people to prepare for that by storing drugs, by preparing to transport people either to safe states or to Canada or Mexico. Um, there are lots of literature, lots of pamphlets going around about safe abortion methods. It's important that people find a trusted one because things like herbal remedies can be very dangerous. Um,
Mhm.
I know a lot of the herbal remedies that I've seen people talk about on Twitter are neurotoxins. They're very poisonous. Um, so, you know, be careful of trying to do medicine on yourself. That's pretty dangerous. Um, but yeah, I mean, there's going to be a long struggle on a number of fronts: mutual aid, harm reduction, um, you know, protesting, all of those things. Uh, and I guess I just have to say that, like all of these struggles, it's of the highest importance that everyone find people, that you create groups of like-minded people. It doesn't have to be like an organization, but you need friends that have your back and
Mhm.
you know, that will take care of you and you can do stuff with. Um, yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to say something real quick. Yeah, be careful with anything, you know, if you're gonna do it yourself or if you don't have someone to trust you. I really don't want, I mean, unfortunately, this is what happened before. People died because they didn't have access to safe abortions. Because we know that they're not going away. We just know safe ones are being threatened. And are already threatened in multiple states, like you said. So I wanted to just say, I know that now you can get birth control online. It's not foolproof. It's never going to be 100%. It's like 99%, some of them. Now you can get it online. Before that was not that easy. If you Google some people might not be able to use that because of, medical issues, or they need a specific number or level of progesterone, or I'm sorry, I don't know how to say it, but on the pills, like people who know what I mean, the hormones. So if you can do that, I mean, yeah, stock up on it maybe if they send you a good amount, because there's more access to it online. I don't know how that would work if states start banning, those kind of packages, or they start enforcing and regulating that. But yeah, like Bubble said, I think just be careful, and there are other options. Like I don't want to tell people to buy a bunch of Plan B, because don't like hoard it, basically. People are going to need it, but if you're planning on helping people out with it and you're actually going to do that, I think that's a good idea. If you can have this sort of network of safe people, that also doesn't always work. There will be cases where someone will need an abortion, and you, like you said, you have to probably get ready to transfer them, and you might have to put up money. You could start a pool to transfer people, to pay for the services, anything. So just get ready for that. And I mean, we know how to educate people in this, but I feel like we're so far past the point of people wanting to listen to sexual education and contraceptives, and looking at the actual numbers. People aren't really open-minded to that.
Yeah, I do know that I think it was Tennessee recently passed a law banning. Um, I think it was abortion pills, or might have included birth control. Um, but yeah, be aware of your local laws. I know there's an abortion pill provider called Plan C that is very helpful. You can go to their website, get a lot of information. I think you can order from a lot of states. I don't think it's all states, um, but you can order those, without an immediate need for it. And like you said, people shouldn't be hoarding medication that other people need. You need to have a plan. If you are willing to invest in this, that's great, but you need a network of people that can get those medications to people who need them. Um, like anything, just doing actions on your own can range from not very helpful to actively harmful. So make sure you're part of a network, make sure you're part of a community taking these actions. On the flip side, I've seen a lot more people getting active, joining groups, getting armed, getting training. Those are all good things. I think those are the things that we need. Those are the things that will ultimately make a difference, is organization, arms training. Um, and, like we talked about a little bit earlier, and I don't know if you've heard about the Atlanta forest situation, but there's a group of people there, and in the previous examples, that they just basically said no. We are the people. We can just say no to things. That is our path forward, because there's really no there's really no way to vote our way out of this. If there ever was, there is not right now. So it's
Mhm.
up to organizing the people.
Yeah, that's so true. Like there's we of course people are scared. Everything in this country, I'm just going to say it, has been made to make us scared, make us work, and make the ruling class richer. And we just stay in our routines and they tie our healthcare to our work. They do that on purpose to keep you stuck. It's like prison. And it's weird because like, so not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but birth rates have been going down for a while now. You can Google it. I don't know if that could be part of the reason, but sometimes part of me thinks like, obviously don't take this seriously. Like, I don't know for sure if that's what's happening, but birth rates have been going down. And, with less people born, there's less workers. And you need that reserve of workers to kind of fight over jobs and resources. So they are too busy to focus on what's actually happening behind the scenes or right in front of them. At least sometimes that's what I think. So I feel like, to kind of force these forced births, it would create more workers in the future for the next generation. Again, I know that sounds crazy, but I could see that happening. Um, but the thing is like we are so many. There's so many people. There's so many more of us than there are them. Again, I'm going to echo that like over and over, and it's hard for us to break out of that cycle of complacency because we have health issues, we have disabled children, disabled parents, we have all these things, bills to pay, we need to do. So it's some people, it's hard for some people to organize or take time off because they're surviving. They want to keep you in a state where you're always surviving. You're never just like calm. It's always one thing after another because what was it, like 70% of Americans can't handle a $400 bill, like an emergency bill. I think that's what it was. And so it's always this state of like worry. You're worried something's going to happen next. Your car breaks down, your bills are too high. So that keeps a lot of people scared from going out of their routine as well. But the fact that you're saying more people are organizing, and I'm seeing that too. I feel like more people are echoing the sentiment of like being sort of done with the system, because you really can say no. Like, you do have a choice, even though it feels like impossible. But if we did, if we have to organize and we have to really work together. This is we keep saying that, and I know it's not, not everyone's going to think that way, but it's so important to get organized, get trained, get armed, um, have a community, have less reliance on the system, so we can get ready for things like this. And they're not caring for our welfare. There's a social contract, so why do we have to follow their rules? I'm not advocating for anything awful, but for legal purposes, I just to let you guys know, I'm not saying do anything awful, but we should have been at that point a while ago, and I think a lot of us are. We're just kind of tired of seeing people who are still like telling people to vote, or it's okay, just vote blue, because that's not going to get us out of this mess, and it's not going to get us out of any other messes, that the risks of LGBTQ people being killed, like that's probably what will happen next, and that's so scary. So yeah, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so important. And there are a lot more people reaching that point of realizing um, this system isn't for us. We didn't choose it. We never voted for it. We didn't build it. Um, it was forced upon us. No one ever chose it, really. Even if you look back at the version of history that they teach to us in school, um, there's a bunch of people, rich old white guys that nobody elected, and they created a government that served them. Built on stolen land and genocide, but not even white people ever voted for it. It was chosen by these rich businessmen. Um, but what you're talking about earlier, I think that's not at all a conspiracy theory. I mean, it's right there in Alito's opinion. He says, uh, in the interest of providing a steady supply of infants, um, they're talking about humans as a commodity. Um, it is for workers. I think it's also um, the way that a nuclear family reinforces capitalist control, um, particularly in that kind of patriarchal, old-fashioned way, to where they tell the man, you know, sure you're getting screwed over by society, but at least you're better than women. At least you're better than black people. You know, you you are the master of your household. You're the ruler of your little house. Um, and that's how you divide the community into these little, feudal units that serve capital. Um, and they long to return to that. Uh,
Mm.
you can see it all over right wing Twitter. Talking about re-enslaving various kinds of people, talking about um, you know forcing the birth of particularly white babies so that they can uphold white supremacy. Um, yeah, it's all kind of out in the open. We're at the mask off phase, and it's very scary. But hopefully, fewer people will hide from it now because
Mm.
for the last however many years, it's been an uphill battle trying to convince people like, hey, they're taking away our rights. Hey, they're gonna take away all our rights. And the libs still say vote. A lot of them are still saying vote right now, which is
Mm.
horrifying. It's delusional, but I think we chip away at that every day because at some point you can't argue with the reality around you.
Yeah, that's true. And I don't mean to laugh at that, but I laugh because it's so ridiculous that like there are groups of people who like, want us, not around anymore, not alive, or they want to enslave us, or they think they're better than us. And it's just because it's like, it's so ridiculous to me. Sorry, that's why I was laughing. So I don't want to be rude. I was just like, that's so crazy because it's like, it sounds so dumb, but like people actually think that way. And, it's obviously not funny, but that's what you have to be ready for. Um, because there are people that don't want people like me or you or anyone else, around. They want their specific, like you said, their nuclear family. They want a trad wife, traditional wife, where the woman stays at home and, you know, can't do anything really. They want to uphold that, like you said, white patriarchal supremacy, and we're seeing that happen. That this country has all of its roots in that. And excuse me, and that's why people like the meme, oh, we used to be a proper country. Like people who actually said that is what they mean. They want that old, rose colored glasses view for them, of like 1950s America, post baby boom, post World War II, and maybe even before that, because they thought, to them it was their perfect white society. And I'm not saying every white person is like that. Like, again, I'm not saying that at all, but there are, white supremacists, within our country's borders, of course, and outside of our countries. There's people like that will always exist. We just have to ensure that they don't ever hold power ever again. They're hopefully, with education, we can eradicate those beliefs and thoughts, but it might never. The world's not perfect, is what I'm saying. We might always have to deal with issues like that, and we always have to be ready for it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the core of the issue lies in the ownership structure. So, even if we combat social attitudes, which I think has been going pretty well, maybe up until 2016, started getting hectic. But as much as we work on social attitudes, we still have an ownership structure set up to where white men owned everything, and they still almost own everything.
Mhm.
Um, and that in itself, enforces uh, white patriarchal supremacy on the whole country. Because in a capitalist society, whoever has the most money, the most wealth, the most capital, the most land, um, they have the greatest say in society. Uh, so it's really a matter of the ownership, which we can't even begin to address through things like laws. We are far from making the laws. The left has never made laws in this country. Even back in FDR, FDR was this compromise to, uh, to prevent the left from being able to make any laws. But even if leftists could make laws, the foundation of our government is private property.
Mhm.
And so there's no way to combat the white supremacist ownership structure. Um, so we need a new system. This this one isn't working.
Yeah.
We didn't choose it. It's not for us. It's not even for most white people. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's gonna be the rest of our lives. Basically, is trying to fight for a new system, because this one is gonna kill us. It's gonna take away our rights. Um, the environment is gonna collapse even more.
Yeah.
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 Uh, But for that, we need groups and arms and food and all of those things that comprise community defense. Community defense is not just guns; it's
Mm.
also medicine, it's also food, it's also housing, and you need to be working on that in your local area. If you don't know how to get started, just go to events and talk to people and ask, "How can I help?" And form connections, form networks, and start doing stuff. Um, yeah,
Yeah. If you're too like scared to like I don't know how to use the word scared, but if you're like too nervous to go and you think people will be like, oh, like think you're a fed or something. Like, because if you start asking questions that looks weird, I don't know. At least for me, I think you could also go through like your local organization. Obviously, like that's what you mean, but there are because for me when I started I didn't really start like organizing. I went through like a local nonprofit, NGO, and then I started meeting people that way who, oh, like we work with these people, like people were dropping off clothes. And I started getting, to know, like, oh, who are these people? Why do they have a truck full of clothes? And it's like a truck full of water. And that's how you can go that way. You can go to a protest, ask who organized the protest, it's just even Google, you can say, labor active, anything. You can find anything online these days. And just basically what I'm saying is just make sure you keep like yourself and like the groups that are actually doing the work safe, because like people don't want those groups to exist. The people in power and their enforcers don't want those groups to exist. So just be careful.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't be too
Yeah.
overeager. Don't show up and be like,
Yeah.
"Hey, I want to do a revolution." Just just start helping out. Carry stuff. Um, Talk to organizers. Ask them what they need. Bring water or whatever. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I wanted to kind of talk about the education aspect. So we know that what we've talked about so far has been, I think great ideas. Um, and we need resources, but we need to execute these ideas. And one of the biggest issues I think is the lack of, education, which is the first, it's the starting point. Yeah, when uh, for example, when I was a kid, we had sexual education, I think in sixth grade. Before that, I had gone to like a really religious private school, so there was none of that. And I had, I had learned everything from television up until that point. And I had sexual education class, and my parents didn't let me go. I had already known most things, but I think that like the fact that my parents they're super religious, and they're just thinking of it in that way, and they're like, oh no, we'll teach our kids ourselves. That is a problem, because I think people should be able to talk to their children or talk to anyone and teach anyone these things in general with reproductive health or anything, sexual education. But that just means, you're getting a very biased version of it. The schools also are going to teach a biased version depending on which state, which, community, because there are schools I'm sure even in California, that teach only, abstinence only based sexual education. And I think that, instead of maybe relying on schools, local organizations can do sex ed and groups and teach children and adults alike. Because there are, like, I saw a tweet, and it said something about some news article about a police officer breastfeeding an abandoned baby, and somebody in the comments were like, oh, I thought you had to be the biological mother to breastfeed. And we know that's not how that works. But so there's a lot of things like that people don't know, and we need to teach that, because there's adults who don't know how that works. They don't know any of that. And I think we need to really focus on that and maybe ramp that up. Of course, some people are not going to listen, but I know that we need more access to sexual education. We need to remove barriers in access and actual reception of contraception. We need to be able to provide those for free. Pamphlets for free for anything. The biggest fight, I think, is ensuring women's and people who have uteruses rights, dignity, and autonomy. Even if they're having a child, like if they want to or if they don't, like in maternity health care, because there are even times like in our country where the maternity death rate is super high, especially for women of color. So we really need to focus on those things as well. And I do agree that like it's a I don't want to say pro-choice, because I'm totally in support of abortion. If someone needs it, I agree 100%. I'm pro bodily autonomy and you making your own choice, but I'm totally in support of that. If someone needs that, wants it, whatever reason, I don't need to know. It's go do it, It's not my right to tell someone what to do with their body. I would never do that. And that's, I think, a big conversation we need to have is in our system as well. There's a huge disconnect between everyone else, like the others with bodily autonomy, versus the, white patriarchal supremacist bodily autonomy. Like there's so much more restriction put on others. And of course, the last thing would be to ensure safe and legal abortion, which is what we're fighting to do now. So we're kind of like having to go backwards. I feel like we should try to combat some, because we can maybe help educate some people with the education, the numbers, the statistics, everything that we have on file. And some people might actually see it and be like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Another issue I wanted to touch on right before I finish, sorry, is that there's this idea that you need to be punished for having sex. Like we live in the Middle Ages, and we're humans, we're mammals. People are going to have sex no matter what. It's never going to stop. Like we reproduce, we don't reproduce. People are always going to do that. You can't control what people do. We don't live in a Christian or religious, theocratic society anymore. It seems like we still have those undertones, but we're supposed to be secular. We're supposed to not have that. And it seems like people want to punish people for that and put the burden of that on people who have to get pregnant and have to carry it. No, I don't think it's fair for either party. I think, both should be able to opt out. And that's just because that's what I believe personally. So, yeah, we just need to get that idea out of people's minds. It's not bad to have sex. Adults have sex, it's normal. Uh, People who are married, I shouldn't be having to tell people that, like, it's a normal thing.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, even in hyper Christian theocratic societies or hyper Muslim theocratic societies, there's still tons of sex. You don't. No one has ever eliminated it in history. Um, it's absurd, and it just ends up being a way that ruling powers um, use to control people or to punish people they don't like, which is going to be a huge aspect of um, abortion control and the rights restrictions in the coming years. Is It's going to fall heavily on certain people. I mean, we saw here in Texas, and fortunately, there was enough of a public outcry that she got released. But the first woman arrested for having an abortion, um, as far as I know, and I think as far as has been publicized, was a Latina in near the border with Mexico. Um, so it becomes an excuse, just like the drug war. It becomes an excuse to attack and disenfranchise um, people they don't like. Uh, One thing that's been brought up a lot is if you make abortion a felony, and it's pretty difficult to prove whether or not someone has had an abortion, then you just investigate, you know, whichever women you don't want to be able to vote. Because if you are a felon, you can't vote, and if you're poor, you're very likely to take a plea deal
Mm.
because 93% of criminal cases in this country do not go to trial. Um, and a lot of those, I think almost half of those, end up in plea deals. And it's not because all those people are guilty, it's because they can't afford a lawyer, they can't afford years of legal battle. Um, so the prosecutor comes to them and says, look, we know you had an abortion. We can go to trial and you can risk 20 years in prison, or we'll give you 3 years if you plead guilty.
Mm.
So people will plead guilty and they'll go to prison for 3 years. They'll get out and they'll, go on to live their lives as a felon, not having gun rights, not having voting rights. Um, yeah. So it is, and these are the things that we need to educate people about. You're totally right. Um, Education is very important. And I think the most important aspect of that is thinking about how we as a community provide that for the community, because the government is not going to go and explain these things. Um, you know what you
Yeah.
can start with if you are a small organization, you don't have enough resources, is collecting all of the information, all of the resources, referring people to people who are doing it in your area, maybe people who are doing it in another state who have classes or resources online. That's the amazing thing about this new, um, like Zoom, Microsoft Teams world that we live in. Is you can attend a class in New York, from your home. That's one good thing about the internet thing that Biden talked about today, which is, you know, a drop in the bucket compared to the horrific issues we're facing. But if people have internet, they'll have access to education and access to organizing through the internet.
Mm.
So that is a positive there.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I agree. I think, or small groups organizing it, and yeah, the internet is it's it's like the wild wild west, but there are lots of things on there that you can use. I feel like I Googled stuff before too to make sure I'm not saying anything wrong, like, and if I was going to say any statistics, and there's just so much stuff on here. You could go even like through, I mean, even the UN has its own page, the WHO, obviously. You go through like European websites, like their actual union, like the EU, and they have lots of positive stuff on there, and they kind of teach you you know, how these things work, and they'll show you the statistics of how many people were already on birth control and the abortion was their plan B or C, like you said. Like plan C, I actually remember that right now when you said that. It's like, that's not, people aren't just grabbing abortions like candy. People usually, like, I mean, some people maybe aren't prepared, and that's totally fine. They should still be able to do it, but there are people who took their birth control or even used a condom or used a plan B, and none of that worked. Um, and that's People aren't looking at every variable because they're just thinking, like, in the mindset of, oh, we have to punish specifically women or people with uteruses for having sex because it's sinful. So yeah, just try to get that information out there. You can find it online. Um, if you don't have access to that, local libraries, you can do that. You can go use their computers, use their Wi-Fi, coffee shops, anything near you. If you live in the country, I'm sure there's a local library. It might take a while to get there because I do know the roads in the country. It's much more spread out. So if you do have internet access, or if you don't, you can check books out in the library as well, or you can call a Planned Parenthood and they can explain stuff to you on the phone if you have one near you, or anything like that.
Yeah, I'll add some links to, I guess, my tweet about this stream when we're done, um, with some resources. But sharing resources is important. Getting organized, I have to say again, is the most important thing.
Mm.
Um, go to events, join groups, start your own group. I know several young people recently who've started their own groups in my area, and they're already up to over 20 people. Um, if you have an idea that you want to accomplish, start a group, tell people about it, and do stuff. We have to do this. Society doesn't work. It doesn't function to take care of us and protect us.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
have to build our own groups to do the things that we want to see happen. Um, because unfortunately, the larger society, the superstructure that again we didn't build, it wasn't ever meant for us. Um, it's falling apart. It's only going to get worse. Uh, we have to build our own thing within kind of the dying body of this other thing that we live inside of.
Yeah, that's true.
And get
100%.
armed too. Buy a gun, get pepper spray. Um, the biggest danger is right now, and or you know, I'll say the biggest danger is the vigilantism. You know, people are going to come after you, not necessarily backed by the state explicitly, um, but we have to be prepared for that.
Yeah, and the fact that you just said that, like, there are state sanctioned ways, like people reporting on people get what, $10,000 for having things like that. There are state sanctioned, like, reporting systems, and that's super draconian. It's just weird. I have almost no words because it's just super creepy. Like we're so there's 340 million people here, and we're so obsessed with like these details of people's like that's just bizarre to me. Like states throwing 10 grand at people for having abortion or at people reporting people for having abortions or anything, and that's like I feel like that I want to say that because it's so serious because the state doesn't just give people money. Like they're throwing a good amount of money and they want to use that obviously as incentive because people are broke. They're like, okay, yeah, I'll take the money. And people do mess up stuff when they're broke, or people who, those are their values and principles. They totally believe that because of religion. And I personally think that's an awful philosophy to have because not everyone follows, not everyone's a Muslim, not everyone's a Christian, so it's just like how I feel about it. But yeah, you just need to be careful because they have vigilantism and you have state sanctioned like secret police pretty much.
Yeah, absolutely. And to when you were talking about earlier punishing people for having sex, um, it's been so mask off this past week. Suddenly, they managed to kill Roe versus Wade, and they're talking about birth control. They're talking about condoms. Um, all the lies of the past decades just fall away. Oh, this is about sanctity of life or whatever. It's like, no, you want to ban condoms and you want to ban birth control. This is clearly a different agenda.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, it is scary. We only have each other, um, and it's impossible to fight alone. I had someone reach out recently. They needed to sell their gun to pay rent,
Um,
um, which is horrible because they said, I need my gun because I'm an at-risk person.
mm,
I'm a trans person, and uh, we put together some money. They wanted to sell their gun. We put together some money so that they could keep their gun, um, and still make rent. Uh, and that's we have to figure out how to do it together because you can't fight back alone. The system is set up to keep you struggling, um, to make sure you don't have any free time or free energy. We have to rely on each other, and I'm hopeful that with all these new people getting involved, we can create durable community programs that will allow people to fight back more. I think like childcare programs are a big part of that. Education programs, like you talked about, mutual aid, sharing funds, group buying, like we've talked about before. Um, you know, get discounts wherever you can on groceries, ammunition, clothing, whatever it may be. Uh, but we have to work together. There's really, really, really no other path forward. Um, we're not gonna
mm.
we're not gonna elect 7 more senators, and even if we did, they wouldn't do anything. They don't want to do anything. I really think the Democrats hate having any power. They hate, I think they hate being able to do stuff. I think they would much rather just fundraise and give speeches and you guys got to get out and vote more. Because when you vote them in, they're really not happy about it. They're
Yeah.
just useless.
They do nothing when they're voted
Yeah.
in. They're just chilling. That's their vacation when they're in office. But yeah, seriously, they don't like it. Um, so weird. I forgot what I was gonna say. That was funny. Okay. Yeah.
All right. Well, we're closing in on the end here. Sure, a lot of things will happen before our next show. So
Yeah, please be safe, everyone. If you have an issue, like anything we talked about, reach out to trusted people. If you have any resource or you need help with any resources and you want to remain anonymous, you can literally DM me or have someone else DM me on your behalf so they don't know who's who, like whatever you want. Which my Twitter is on there. Just be careful. It's like Bubbles said earlier, it's dark times ahead. Stick together and again, get armed. I'm always gonna say that. And learn how to use it too. Don't just get it. But yeah, I think we're good. You can follow me on Twitter at Lickstiel. You don't even have to follow me. You could just DM me if you need help. Lickstiel. And yeah, I will see you guys next, or everyone next time. Sorry, I'm trying not to use the word guys. And to Bubbles.
absolutely. Second everything you said. Thank you so much as always. You can find me at Double Break BS on Twitter, and also you can find the martial arts and airsoft group that I started at A Airsoftist. DMs are always open, and yeah, stay safe, and we'll see you next time. Have a good night.